How you doing? I'm Bob from Stay at Home Bob. This is Cooking Stuff Volume 1, Pulled Pork Shoulder. Today we're going to rock one of my favorite cuts of meat out there, the Boston butt pulled pork shoulder. We're going to slow smoke it on a offset smoker, and it's going to be delicious. This is going to be a long video, so I will try to put little tags at each segment so that you can jump around. Otherwise, buckle in. It should be a lot of fun. Hey guys, how you doing? We're about to carve my very favorite cut of all meats, the pork butt, for some pulled pork. This is about an 8.5, 9-pound butt. It's bone in. See a little bone here, and there's another little bone over here. What we're going to do, this is actually not too bad of a trim. That fat cap is way thick anyway. But what we're going to do is we're going to take that fat cap all the way off, which will offend some barbecue purists, but I don't think a fat cap does us any good, and it gets in the way of all kinds of bark that could form on the meat that's underneath that, so screw it, it's going away. Other people will say that the fat cap can render and give you more flavor in the meat. There is plenty of fat in a pork butt to render. You don't have to worry about there not being enough fat to give you juicy, yummy meat. Just kind of keep dissecting this guy right along that line between the fat cap and that first little layer of muscle there. If you cut a little bit of muscle off, it's no big deal. This isn't surgery. This is kind of what we're going through here. Sorry about the cling wrap on my finger. I cut it earlier tonight, and I have super glued it and wrapped it in cling wrap just to keep myself from bleeding on this project here. You want to have a nice sharp knife for this. You don't want to really mess around with a dull knife when you're trying to cut raw fat off of raw pork. You'll have a long, painful day. So we're just kind of carving away. That looks like that's pretty much it. And by the time you're done doing this, your pork butt will lose about probably a pound in fat alone that you're cutting off of here, maybe less, but still it's I really want to get just pure meat right here all the way around the outside as much as I can, because the best thing is the bark. Now I feel like it's practically a disclaimer with these barbecue videos, but the pork butt is not from the butt of the pig. It's actually ham. It's the butt of the pig. They call it pork butt because apparently that's what these barrels that they used to put these things in were called butts. So I don't know. That's much of the history now. If you know any more of the history, you can leave it in the comments. So that's pretty good. I'm gonna flip this over. All right, and then on this side, it's kind of hard because I have this kind of Band-Aid thing going on, but so with your bone right here, you want to kind of feel around and see if you can feel anything firm. Tends to be a lot of cartilage that gets left behind from the butchering process on this side of the pork butt. So you just want to feel around. It's usually kind of along the seam here. If you feel anything firm or anything that looks funny, a little too white to be fat or something like that. But this one looks pretty good. So I'll carve a little piece off of here. All right, so this end here is the money muscle. You see these little striations here. They call it the money muscle because people who do competition barbecue, they tend to separate this out. They kind of butcher this out here along this fat line and kind of separate that little hunk of meat out, and it ends up being like a little tube. Put seasonings all around it, and then that's what they present to the judges, because that's supposed to be the best cut of the pork shoulder. I tried to do that on our last barbecue. It didn't taste any different, to be honest. So I don't know what the big deal is about. All right, so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to work into this seam, which is right here. And you can kind of pull it apart manually at first just to kind of show you what it is. Almost manually. All right. So this seam in here is kind of between the bone, which is here, and it almost kind of diagonally cuts your pork shoulder in half. And what it is it's just got a lot of cartilage, it's got a lot of silver skin in there. None of that renders down, none of that is good eating. So you just want to kind of cut until you get to the end of that seam, which is almost all the way through. You'll notice as you cut down, you'll start to just get little peaks of meat. And that's when you stop. So there we are. So you can kind of see there's a little piece of meat that I cut through there. That's the end of the seam. And then we'll just clean off the fat from here and the fat from here, and we'll put it back together again. Another cool thing about this is you can put your seasonings in here now. And so, back to work. None of this is good eating. None of this is good fat. It's just all silver skin. It's all gross stuff that you would have to pick out. This is the stuff that gets caught up in the claws when you're shredding the pork. And why bother with the claws when you can get it before you even cook it? So we'll do the top and then we'll call it a day. It's a little easier from this angle. Alright, that fat's all good there. That's all good fat. A little piece of that vein that we wanted to get rid of. And cut that out. So now that whole seam is cleaned up nice, we'll get this little piece of crap out of here. You can see it's cleaned up a little nice. I maybe took a bigger chunk than I should have out of there. But we got rid of all the silver skin, we got rid of all the kind of cartilagey fat. And when you smoke it, we can kind of come in here with the mustard and the rub, which we'll do later. Put the rub in there, and you just kind of form it back up and smoke it like that. And this just becomes delicious, wonderful, miracle food. So that's pretty much it. So again, we're looking at the top here. Spin it around one more time. Got the bone, the other side of the bone, somewhere here. There it is, bone. It's all one piece. And then you come around here, the other side. You have the money muscle with little striations going up and down. And if we flip it over, this is what was the fat cap, and is now a piece of cartilage. All right, and is now. Oh no, it's just a piece of trim fat. It's now nice and clean. It's just going to get all barky and wonderful, and it's going to be delicious. So we'll see you next time where we do some prep before we barbecue. We'll give it the rub, and then we'll head out to the smoker. Today we're going to inject our pork shoulder rather than marinate it or brine it. With traditional marinade, where you just leave a piece of meat soaking in tasty juices, that's fine if you have something really thin, like a steak or a burger or something like that, or a piece of chicken. With a 10-pound pork shoulder, the marinade really doesn't have a chance to penetrate deep enough into the meat to really make a difference. And with brining, I know a lot of people brine. I've been told that brining, the salt in the brine can tend to pull moisture out of the meat, and can also sort of harden the fat that's in there. And in this case, we want to kind of render that fat and liquefy it and let it absorb into the meat. And so we don't want to do anything that's going to harden it or stop it from rendering. So we'll inject this one. I don't always inject. Sometimes I just throw a rub on and put it on the grill. That's also just as good. But I think sometimes when you inject it, it does make it a little bit more moist. So I figured we'll do that for this one since we're making a video. Anyway, here's the injection. Welcome back. Now we're going to start working on our injection. I think I already talked about why I like injection over marinating. Usually you can buy an injection, pretty much anything you put in there, as long as it's got some juice in it, is going to be fine. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to show you how you can kind of go crazy with an injection. So what I'm going to be injecting into I'm making 2 pork butts tomorrow, or in the morning. It's going to be a few hours from now. I'm going to be making 2 of these, so everything's double what I'm going to tell you to get for this particular recipe. So you'll see things, you'll be like, that looks like more than that. That's because I'm doing everything in double, but you'll get the idea. So for this particular recipe, you're going to want 2 cups of apple juice. You're going to want 2 tablespoons of your favorite rub, of the rub that you're actually going to be using. That's important, actually. So you want to make sure it's the rub that you're going to use tomorrow, or in the morning, or in a few hours. You want 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. Same thing, 2 tablespoons of honey. You want 1 teaspoon of your favorite heat. This stuff, I just have to pause that for a second and say this stuff is amazing. This is from a tiny little company that a person I know really well started, a good old friend of mine. Really hot. It's got tons of flavor. It's amazing. Look them up, Bang Bangs. You have to, I think, still buy directly from him. I don't think he's in stores yet, but that spice is amazing. If you don't have Bang Bangs, then just use your favorite hot pepper. Granulated habanero would be great. Whatever kind of ghost pepper, dry seasoning you have, that would be something you could substitute in there. Just whatever hot pepper kind of thing that you want to put into your to kind of spice up your thing would be in there. You want a 1/4 cup of OJ. You want a 1/2 cup of lemon juice. Another, shameless product endorsement. If you can't get your hands on lemons, to make some fresh squeezed lemon juice, this stuff that they sell at Whole Foods is actually really, really solid. I use this a lot for fresh squeezed lemon. It's really, really awesome stuff. And that's going to be our injection. So we're just going to kind of combine everything into a blender. You want your blender to, be something that'll just decimate the shit out of it, because you want to really kind of break up these spices and help them get absorbed by the liquids a little better. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to put everything in here. We're going to, in this thing, I have a Wolf blender. If you can get your hands on a Wolf, these are great. Set it to puree. Throw everything in there, let it do its puree cycle, and then leave it alone. Let it sit in there and let it just kind of all soak. And then we are going to get the butts ready, and kind of get everything ready to inject. And then we'll blend it again, and then we'll filter it, and I'll show you how to inject. So let's get started. We're going to start just kind of throwing in the dry stuff, and then we'll pour in the wet stuff on top. Now again, you can save most of this hassle by just going onto Amazon and spending, $20-$40 on a good injection powder. It's going to basically have all these flavors in it, or it'll have flavors that you'll like, because you can usually look at the ingredient lists on those things. I don't have any, and I'm cooking in a few hours, so I had to make an injection, and this is the injection I'm going to make for tomorrow. All right, so we have a little issue here. These butts I had to buy a couple of days ago, because that was just the only window of time I had to go to the butcher shop that's a half hour away from here with my 6-month-old. And what I did is I trimmed them, like I showed you in the video, and then I vacuum sealed them, and I put them in the freezer. It appears they haven't totally thawed out yet. I took them out of the freezer yesterday afternoon, and they're still awfully frozen. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip ahead and do some other things, and we're going to reblend this kind of tequila sunrise of a injection that we have over here, and then we're going to see what we got over here to deal with. Well, shit. So we have 2 frozen butts. I quickly searched the internet to find out what I can do about this situation, and unfortunately we're at a really weird time. I'm about 6 or 7 hours from cooking, and I have to thaw these things in time to inject them, rub them, and then get them on the fire early enough to get to dinner tomorrow night. So we're kind of in a weird spot. So what I did find on the internet is that you can run cold water into a bath like this, and that will thaw the pork butts over, I think it's a half an hour per pound. So I figure these are half thawed because they sat in the fridge for 24 hours when they should have been sitting for 48 hours. So my best guess is that in 2.5 hours we'll be kind of okay. So at that point, I'm going to try one last chance to inject this thing, and hopefully we'll get something in there. We'll put a rub on. Rub doesn't care if it's frozen, so that doesn't matter. And that's really, the injection is not that necessary. The rub is really necessary. So we'll inject what we can, we'll rub it, and we'll get it on the fire by 7 a.m., I think is my target. And we'll see where we're at. Maybe this will be a happy accident and it'll kind of make it a wonderful pork butt that takes an extra couple hours to cook, and that made all the difference. We'll see. Anyway, brings us to this. This sat for a really long time. I kind of kept pulsing it as I was doing all this other stuff, and it's really well mixed. The reason I do that is because I really want to filter out any larger particles, because this is not only going to go into an injector that can be very, very easily clogged, but it's going to go into a spray bottle that can be even more easily clogged. So I wanted to make sure that all the flavor is in the fluid, but I don't want any more solid particles. So I'm going to use this really, really fine kind of dim sum dumpling strainer thing to strain the injection. So we'll kind of get going on that. So every once in a while the strainer is going to get clogged like it is right now. That's a good thing. That means it's keeping the solid stuff out. So all I ever do is I just kind of dump it back in the pitcher, I rinse out the strainer, and keep going until the pitcher is basically empty. Alright, so what we're left with is a little over 32 ounces of strained injection that we've made, and there's some left over, and that's intentional. We're gonna use 16 ounces per butt if we can get it in there with this frozen butts, but it's gonna be 16 ounces per butt of injection, and then the rest of this stuff we're gonna hold on to for spray, and then also to pour in with the pork when we pull it later. So we're gonna keep all this. This is good stuff. It took a lot of work to make it, so we'll keep it. Otherwise, I'm just gonna pour this in a bowl, get it ready for the sprayer, and stuff that you don't really need to see, and we'll get back. All right, so it's now 1 a.m. They're still really cold, but they're largely thawed, and this is as warm as I want to let them get, since we still have a few hours before we cook. So I don't want them to get above 40 degrees, which is really the kind of threshold for where you're in trouble, letting meat sit that long. So we're gonna go ahead and inject this now, and if it's too frozen to take it on, then so be it. But we'll get them injected, we'll get them rubbed, and get them back in the fridge so they can stay below that magic 40-degree mark. So basically all I'm doing is I'm every inch or so just kind of making an imaginary grid across the butt using this big ass needle. You do want to get a nice kind of industrial sized meat injector to do this, because it's kind of requires a little bit of strength to push that through there, and you don't want to bend a needle, and you also want to get something that has these big, like 6-inch long needles to get through these meats. I forget the one I'm using now, Smoky Hollow something. I got it on Amazon. I'll put a link once I figure out which one it is. I'm going through the ice cubes. All right. And I'm not going to end up using all of my injection on this one. It's looking like I'm about halfway through working on one butt, so do what you want to do. I'll probably save the rest of it to spray. When during the cook, I'll just spray with a lot of this stuff to keep it moist. All right, that's injected and we're done. Get the other one done, get it all cleaned up, and then we'll rub. So the choice of rub for barbecue is an entirely personal one, and I won't suggest anything for you. I actually am still searching for the perfect rub for me anyway. But basically, you know, everyone's got their own opinion about what the best kind of rub is. Some people go ultra spicy, some people go really, really sweet, some people kind of stick into the savory, and some people just do salt, pepper, garlic, onion, and sugar. So you really just got to try things out and kind of guess at what you're going to like until you found something that you really like. I'm on probably my 5th or 6th store-bought or internet-bought rub. And what I've been doing is I'll taste one, I'll like it or not like it. If I don't like it, it goes in the trash. If I like it, then I think about, well, maybe I would like a little more garlic in it than this, or I would like a little more sugar or a little more salt. And I add those things, and I just throw the whole thing in a bag. And then I'll end up buying another store-bought rub for some other reason later on down the road. Try that, figure out what I don't like about it and what I want to add, and then I'll add my things to it and throw it in the same bag. And so I end up with like this big Ziploc bag with, I don't know, at this point now, 6 or 7 different rubs in it, well, along with kind of my spice additions. So I call it Bob's Secret Barbecue Rub because I have no freaking idea what's in there, but it tastes good. So that's the system I have. You'll create a system for yourself, and this is how you rub a pork butt. So for the rub, all you need is your favorite barbecue rub, yellow mustard, 8 imparts 0 flavor to the pork butt. So you can just use cheap yellow mustard. All it is glue to hold on to the spices of the rub. All right, and I like to have a clean hand and a dirty hand. So this guy will be clean, this guy will be dirty. So I'll move that over there. And we'll just kind of rub the mustard all over, get into all the crevices, get into the seam that we trimmed before, and then just generously sprinkle rub like you're just painting this stuff on. Waste it, just plow it on there. Flip it over. There we go. All right. And mustard and rub again. And just try to kind of be conscious of your clean hand and your dirty hand because you don't want to touch any of this stuff that can't be disinfected easily because you'll end up passing potential germs on to your friends and loved ones, and that sucks. That's what it's going to look like when it goes in the cooker, so we're pretty much done with the prep anyway. So which smoker you choose is going to be a really personal choice. For me right now, I'm using an Oklahoma Joe's offset smoker. It's also called a stick burner. That's simply because you have a cook chamber kind of over here where you have all your meat and whatever you're going to be smoking. And then off to the side is where you build your fire, almost like a fireplace. I use a combination of charcoal and wood. So I'll use charcoal to have a nice kind of slow burning, steady source of coals at the bottom of the fire chamber, and then I'll throw wood on top of it to make my smoke. A lot of people, will just smoke with wood, and they use wood just like you would in a fireplace. That's fine. I'm sure it tastes great, but it's a hell of a lot of work, and you're constantly out there refeeding this thing. And if your cook is, 12, 14 hours long, that's pretty brutal. So that's my setup. You can also go, totally autopilot and get a electric smoker or a pellet smoker for quite a bit more money. But they're really nice because you can get up in the middle of the night, kind of start your cook off, put your meat on, and then go to bed and forget about it and come back 12 hours later and have finished food. So that might be something I invest in the future. But for now, this is what I'm using, and I really like it, especially because it was a Father's Day present from my wife. So I'll be using this for a while, and I really enjoy it. Anyway, this is how I'm going to cook a pork butt. All right, so it's a little after 6 in the morning. Everything's kind of starting to get going here. I have my chimney with just a handful of charcoals in it. That is almost ready to get going. The bottom drip pan is going to stay empty, and that's just going to be catching drippings. And then we have this pan here I'm going to fill with water as soon as I get the fire going. That's pretty much it. So we'll get this fire going, we'll get it warmed up, and then we'll get some food on here. Alright, so it's about 6:45. We're just starting to come up to temperature now. So this is going to be our ambient temperature probe for the air in the grill. I wrap foil around especially my ambient temperature probe because it's there for every single time I smoke. And I don't want it to get too gucked up. And then in here, you see our fire is getting going pretty nicely. The fan is just blasting right now, so it's spreading a little faster than it should. So I just opened the door a little bit just to kind of make the fan less of an issue. And then I have my chimney all the way open. And so we're just gonna sit here and wait while this thing comes up to temperature. It dropped, of course, just because I opened the door. But it's getting really close, so we're gonna start getting the butts ready now. All right, so the grill is at about 203, 204 right now. So it's not quite up to 225, but I think it's warm enough to put the butts on. So here they are, and they're 20 pounds of glory. And let's get this guy open. The bigger one on the back. Looks something like this. Put more rub on, and it's just starting to sprinkle. So we're rubbed, and we don't have to do anything else. Put my temperature probes in. Get them right into the middle of the meat. Something like that. They're roughly the same temperature, so we know they're both kind of towards the center. Hopefully the temperature probe being that far over isn't going to be a problem, but we'll just keep the lid closed and we won't open it again for at least another hour. We're just now starting to kind of level out at 225. We're kind of bouncing back and forth. It'll go to 222, it'll bounce to 227 and kind of hone in from there, and eventually it'll settle in. Mostly because of this fan shutting on, this fan turning on and off tends to keep it dialed in like an oven once it gets settled. But it does take a little bit, so it's now what, 7:40, so it's been in about a half an hour. I put them in at about 200, so now it bounced back up to 229. And we'll check in an hour when we flip. All right, so it's been about an hour. It is now about 8:15. And we're gonna open the lid for the first time since we put the butts in, and we're gonna spritz them with the stuff that we used for the injection. You can also just use applesauce. This is where we wanna start being really good about our lid discipline. We want this lid open as little as possible, and we just want to get it spritzed and get out so that it doesn't lose too much temperature. Right now we're sitting a little on the warm side. I just put a piece of wood in, hopefully to try to help us kind of recover a little more quickly from this. So I'm just going to open up and spritz and we'll be done. Alright, and that is about as much as we can do. It's nice and wet. Now we're going to close it. And we're good. We're dropped to 200, which isn't ideal, but our meat temperatures are still so low that it's not going to stall the cook. And it's bouncing back really, really quickly. You can see. So that's it. Alright, so we're back. We're at about 2 hours cooking time. It's 9:30-ish. So what we're going to do is we want to move super quickly, so you always want to gather all your stuff because this is going to be a long time with the lid open and we're going to lose a lot of temperature. We know we want to squirt marinade on all over the pork butts. We also want to refill that little water bucket that's helping to stabilize our temperature and keep things moist in there because that's probably nearly empty. And then we're going to remove the probes, turn the butts, put the probes back in. So there's a lot of stuff to do and not much time, so let's get to it. Look pretty good. Getting one last spritz on this side. Just starting to get a little tiny bit of bark forming. That's our alarm telling us we shouldn't have our lid open. And that brought us down to 132, but it's bouncing right back up. So hopefully that won't be too much of a stall in the cook. It's still hotter than the meat, so that's good. Otherwise, I think we're good. All right, so it is now 10:30 something. We're getting there. We're about 125, 129 for each of the butts. We're going to open it one more time and give it a spritz. And then it becomes decision time if we're going to wrap it or not. But we'll get to that in an hour or so. So let's open this sucker up and give it a little spritz. Nice little bark forming. There's still plenty of water there. Get it nice and wet. All right, now that we're fogging over, I think I'm gonna shut it up. And we drop to about 201, it looks like, 201 and a half. So it's coming back up pretty quick. Once it comes back up to temperature, I will quickly open the firebox and throw in some wood, and we'll get back together for that. Thanks. All right, so it's now 11:45, so we're at the second turn, it's third turn. I'm gonna kind of do the same thing, try to keep the heat in and spin it. All right. Not helpful that it's raining right now. Okay, I'm gonna spin this around. I'm gonna spin this one around. Squirt it again. Put the water back up. And that's our alarm. Look at our temperatures. Get this guy in a little deeper, and we're good. All right, so we have a fun little science thing that's happening, and it's new to me because this is the first time. I usually smoke at 250, but the gold standard is 225, so that's why I did it this time with these guys. And what's happening is I'm hitting a stall at right around 145 degrees, and in fact, one of them is actually losing temperature now. It started at 145, and now it's down to 143 and a half. So this is a stall. We've been here at about an hour. This happens with pork butts, and it's not a good thing or a bad thing. Essentially what it is when the pork gets hot, it starts to lose its water, and that water vapor starts to evaporate off of the pork butt, and usually it gets like really moist, and then the water vapor goes away, and that's actually one of the reasons that the crust in the bark forms. Most of the time this happens at 160 degrees, and I've been waiting for 160 to hit all this time. And then I had to do some reading, and it turns out because I have a fan system, and this is only the second time I've cooked pulled pork with the fan, sorry, it was raining, that it changes the physics of the pork butt stall a little bit. Because I have air being forced through constantly going this way, it's actually evaporating that moisture at a lower temperature. So my stall is happening at 145, where most people who have an ordinary smoker, their stall would happen at about 160. So there's not a whole lot I can do about this. I could wrap it, but it's not really, the bark isn't formed enough yet really to wrap it. So I want to let that bark form a little more. I could turn up the temperature, but I really want to try to stick to the 225 goal I set for myself. But I also have a 7 o'clock dinner time, and it is after 1 o'clock right now. So that's not a possibility either. So the only other thing I can do is remove the water pan that's sitting right here. So remember, from the beginning of the cook, we put that water pan in there to help stabilize the temperature and also add some moisture to the cook. Well, right now, moisture is not our friend. So I'm going to take that water pan out, dump out the water. I'm going to replace the pan so it's still kind of shielding the direct heat from the pork butts. But I'm just going to put it in there empty and just let it sit like that. And hopefully that'll dry out really quickly, and it'll help these guys to kind of overcome this stall, because we could be sitting here for hours like this. So here we go. This would have been easier to do had I not just filled it like 20 minutes ago. All right, so out goes the water. Pan goes back, close the lid before I lose even more temp. But otherwise the bark is starting to form. That's how you know you're starting to really evaporate. So it's looking good. I'm not going to spritz anymore until I get past this stall. And there goes my low temperature alarm. And that's it. So that was something I learned this time, so I figured I might as well pass it on. We continue. All right, so it is now about 6, 7 after 2. And we are still stuck in this stall. The stall started, looks like, around 12:15. We were at 143, 144. It is now, like I said, almost 10 after 2, and we're at 147. So we have not moved for 2 hours. So this is probably when we would normally be pulling out of the stall anyway, but pulling out of the stall would mean slowly ramping up a few degrees at a time. And we have 3 hours before I need to take this thing out and put it in a cooler. And we have 56 degrees to go, 55 degrees to go before it's done, which is far, far too far away. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn up the temp to 250. I'll take a peek really quick at the butts. The bark is actually forming pretty well, but it's not totally on yet. Like, there's still some areas that don't have any bark formed yet. So I'm gonna turn this puppy up to 250. And as soon as I see usable bark, I'm gonna wrap it and then turn the temperature way the hell up to probably 275 even, and hopefully get this guy done by 5 o'clock so that we can eat by 7. So that's where we are. I think the rain isn't helping. I think there's a lot of moisture. I think it's just a slow cook day. But we planned on it being a late dinner anyway, and so I started late, which was stupid. But you live and you learn. All right, it's 2:30. We are dead stopped at 149 again. So we're kind of in this like stall craziness. So I'm taking the butts off. I'm gonna wrap them in foil, and we'll take it from there. Look, they're in there, probes are back in, and right back where we were. So now we wait. The foil usually helps it heat up really quickly, and there it goes, it's starting to climb. Good. Okay, we're back, and we have about 30 minutes to go before I really wanted to pull this thing out. And so what I ended up doing is, I think I filmed it, we wrapped the butts there around 140, and that was around 2 o'clock. It is now 4:30. We have not opened that lid. We've just been letting it just take on as much heat as it can. I bumped it up to 250 for about 20-30 minutes, made no difference. Bumped it up to 275 for about an hour, hour and a half. That started to bring it up, but not at a fast enough curve. So now we bumped it all the way up to 300, which is super, super hot for pulled pork, but it was already mostly done by then. So that's going to be our fate. One of the things with barbecue in general is you really can't count on the time that you think it's going to take. My first 3 pulled pork attempts all finished early, and this one is going to finish late in spite of my best efforts to correct that. But it's going to finish just a little bit late. So that brings us to this concern about it being 300 degrees. I'm not in love with 300 degrees. I actually wanted to cook this colder than normal, which I usually cook at 250, and this one I wanted to cook at 225. And it kind of backfired, and now at the end of the cook, which is really where you want it to cool down a little, I had to bring out the temperature quite a bit. So where does that leave us? Well, if you think of barbecue meat as a Catholic college kid who maybe had too much fun at spring break, then there is a priest, and that is the Faux Cambro. It essentially forgives all those sins, because what it does is it has a little bit of a carryover cook to maybe 210, 215, but then it just holds that temperature there, and then the meat can kind of swing back the other way and start to head back down to the 200s again, to 200 again, or maybe the 190s. So that by the time you open the cooler, it's reabsorbing a lot of those juices, and it's still kind of melting collagen. somehow, and I don't know why, more efficiently than it does in the cooker for the same amount of time. So that's what we're gonna do today. I have everything set up. We're gonna plan on pulling this thing out. Looks like we're almost at 190. So we're gonna pull the first one out probably in about 20 minutes, and then the second one maybe 10 minutes after that. So I'll get back to you when we do that. All right, so everything's ready to come off. So we're gonna do this Faux Cambro. So we're gonna take the butts out, put them in the foil, put them in the cooler, and then cover them up for 2 hours. 2 to 4, they say. But we'll do 2 on this one. Oh. And we'll keep that covered, and in 2 hours it's going to be amazing. Alright, so this is what we got. Bone pretty much just came out. Sticker on there. Oh, it just fell off. Alright. So that is hot as hell. So it's been resting for 2 hours. And super, super hot. Bone's clean. That's a good sign. I'm gonna try a little piece. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's good stuff. Alright. Just dumped it in there just to keep all the juices, but I'll get it shredded up and come back out. Alright, so now we're just going to pull it with some claws. Looks really good. And since we already trimmed it, there's really almost no fat in here, and it's just falling apart. And it's still so hot. What do you think, Anna? You smell good? All right, that's one of them. We got another one to get out and shred. All right, so here's the other one. This is the smaller one of the two. And I'm gonna try to unwrap this outside of the basin because I just discovered now that I only have this basin left. I don't have other foil basins. Oh my god, that's hot. And that does. It's hot. See the steam? Alright. And where is that one? Oh my god, it's even better than the first one. Oh. And that one, basically comes right out. I can grab the stupid thing. Yeah, hopefully not clean. It's done. So we'll pull that guy in here. Mostly in one piece. Try to get those juices in there, and that's what I'm talking about there. All right, we'll get this shredded up, throw it in a sandwich, and see what everybody thinks. All right, so this is moment of truth. I'm try to put this little guy together here. I'm gonna go no sauce. Yeah, go shop.